Yo, welcome back. Thank you for clicking this video. Today, we are gonna talk about a little something called antipodes. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and mix things up a little bit on this channel. And we're gonna go and bring this camera around behind me. You see that map? That's what we're gonna be talking about. So let me ask you, you ever wondered what would happen if you just dug a hole right through the ground, right? Hypothetically, you would dig through the earth, assuming you escaped the molten core, right? And you would hypothetically pop up on the exact opposite side of our globe, right? Because the hole would be on one side, you dig right through, and because our beautiful planet is a sphere, you'd pop out on the other side. And because it's a sphere, every single point on our planet has another point that's the exact opposite, right? So the beginning of your hole where you start digging and the end of your hole where you pop out, those 2 points are gonna be called your antipodes, okay? So once again, because we live on a big ball, every single point on this big ball has an antipode. You get it? If that didn't make any sense, here's the definition on the screen. Now, say you start digging, right, a hole on anywhere that is land on our entire planet, right? Most places that you're gonna pop out on the other side are gonna be what I like to call an aqua antipode, right? And that basically just means if you dug straight down from the land, you'd pop up in water and drown. Rip, sorry, that's the story. However, there are still many locations on this planet that have land antipodes. For example, if we take this map here, which is what we're going to be using during this video to help us understand antipodes. If you went to Baffin Island here in Canada, you'd exit in Antarctica, right? So that's if you dug a hole straight through from Baffin Island, that hole would pop up in Antarctica, right? Similar story for Russia. If you dug this hole straight down through Russia, you'd end up in this part of Argentina. Now, antipodes, despite being the farthest points away from each other on our planet, tend to be a lot more similar than you think, right? That's because they're at the same latitudes from the equator. They're just in different locations, right? And because they're at the same latitudes, they share a lot of the same forces that influence the natural environments around them, right? For example, you can see here that the antipode of Borneo is right here in northern Brazil, right? It's like the Amazon rainforest area. But even though these 2 points are on the opposite sides of the world, they're quite similar, right? But these latitudes aren't the only force that influences geography and the climate of a region. And though some places share the same distance from the equator, they can still be radically different, right? So both these areas are categorized by hot, dense jungle, a big abundance of wildlife and variety of wildlife and plants and stuff like that. They're both rainforests, so it rains a lot in both places, right? The temperature doesn't fluctuate through the year. So a lot of similarities, right? It's pretty cool stuff. Now, we'll go back to the idea of latitudes, okay? The latitude is not the only thing that makes and creates similarity between 2 locations, right? Because some locations, even though they share the same latitude away from the equator, right? One location can be 30 degrees north of the equator and one can be 30 degrees south of the equator. That's the same amount of latitude from the equator, right? Both being 30. They can have wildly different environments. So we're gonna go take a look at some of these locations, some of these antipodes where on one side of the earth is a completely different environment from the other side of the earth, right? We're gonna take a look at these radical locations and we're gonna do our top 3 most different antipodes in the entire world. Let's go. Boom. So we're gonna go back to this map to help us out and visualize this. But on the first entry, on our left side of the map, we've got Mauritania, right? Country in the Sahara region of Northern Africa. And on the right side, we've got New Caledonia. And New Caledonia is a French overseas territory just east of Australia in the South Pacific. Well, I guess it's like West Pacific, West-South Pacific, Southwest Pacific, whatever, right? So these 2 places are incredibly different, right? Mauritania is a desert country in Africa, and New Caledonia is an island in the Pacific. And if we look here at the Köppen Climate Index, which I really love to do because it gives us a really, really good insight onto the climate and kind of features of an area, right? We can see that Mauritania is dry, arid, desert, hot, while New Caledonia is tropical, rainforest, monsoon, and in some parts, savanna. The different colors on this map designate a different type of Köppen climate classification. So here they are on the screen, all the different types of classifications. So you can kind of correlate the color that it shows in this map to the classification. So once again, Mauritania, dry, arid desert, hot. New Caledonia, tropical, rainforest, monsoon, tropical savanna, right? Completely different in terms of their climate. And really close to New Caledonia, we're gonna go over to Vanuatu, which, unlike New Caledonia, which is a part of France, Vanuatu is its own independent country. Now, Vanuatu, as we can see here, is tropical rainforest climate on the Köppen Climate Index, and its antipode still in Mauritania. So a really, really similar story to what we're seeing between Mauritania and New Caledonia to what we're seeing between Mauritania and Vanuatu. Going back to our map, we are just going to go over to the right from Mauritania into the country of Mali. And we aren't going to go too far on the other side of the map, on the Antipodes, from Vanuatu over to Fiji. So this is another island nation in the Pacific, and its antipode is once again in the Saharan region of Africa. Different country, Mali, than Mauritania. However, it's the same exact Köppen Climate Index. So this area of Mali is going to be dry, arid desert, and hot. You see, the southern part of Mali is different. It's not as hot, right? It's not as much of a desert. It's kind of gets into the Sahel region of Africa. But here in Fiji, we've got, again, the tropical climate, tropical rainforest / tropical monsoon. So as we can see, a lot of these islands in this area of the Pacific, right, in their antipodes in the Saharan region of Africa, of course it's going to be super, super different. And it's really cool that despite being the same amount of latitude away from the equator, which, let's see, it's looking like between the 10th and 20th degree, north and south of the equator, there are such different climates here. And just a cool thing about anthropology is that the climate of an area and the geography of an area are really, really influential into the culture that is created and that exists in the lifestyle that is lived by the people in the areas that they live in, right? So we go look at Mauritania and Mali, and the clothing looks different. The music is made from different materials, so therefore it sounds different. The way of life is different in the sense of how their economy functions and runs. The way they have interacted with other people is different. They use caravans and camels to cross the desert in Mauritania and Mali, but in Vanuatu, New Caledonia, and Fiji, and a lot of these other Pacific islands, there's a lot of water. Boats are used instead. I mean, granted, boats are used on, the coast of Mauritania, but, boats are how cultures interacted and stuff was traded in that area. So, and it all it's like trickles down, right, into the way that people live their lives and cultures expressed. So, it's really, really cool. So when I'm talking about these antipodes, like obviously Antarctica has antipodes in the far north of the northern hemisphere. So a lot of the icy tundra regions of, the north are going to have Antarctic antipodes. But I've intentionally left these out because they're pretty much, the antipodes have very, very similar characteristics. Except if we look down here, and I know that I said I was only going to do 3, but I do want to throw in an honorable mention in here, which is Kerguelen Island here in the southern Indian Ocean, which is an overseas territory of France, and then here in southeastern Calgary in Canada. And what's cool is that, again, we look at the Köppen Climate Index, right? The Kerguelen Islands are going to be polar tundra, and southern Calgary is continental with warm summers. I mean, these two areas are completely different from one another. In fact, I don't know, penguins even live in the Kerguelen Islands, and penguins don't live in southern Alberta. I mean, it's anybody who knows anything about either two can tell you that they are not very similar. So now that we've taken a look at some really interesting and different antipodes, we can talk about what, in my opinion, I guess it's not really an opinion, it's gotta be fact, but from my research, these two places are the most different antipodes in the entire world. And somebody correct me in the comments if they find something different. So on the left side of the map, you guys can see that we have Hainan Island in China. Now, Hainan Island has tropical monsoon Köppen climate index, as well as tropical savanna, and a little bit of temperate. And on the other side, its antipode is gonna be the Atacama Desert in Chile, right? The Atacama Desert, I guess Atacama or Atacama, whatever one you want, right? The Atacama Desert is dry, arid, and cold. I mean, just look at those adjectives. Tropical, temperate on Hainan, and then dry, arid, cold in Chile. Those are completely different, right? Just take a look at some of the differences geographically and environmentally between these two places. I've got them up on the screen. As you can see, Hainan has these lush forests, there's a lot of green, it has access to warm waters which influence the environment and the weather, and then here, the Atacama Desert, it is dry. In fact, the Atacama Desert is the driest place in the entire world. It receives the least precipitation out of any location on this planet, right? It's cold, it can get foggy here. It is very hard for life to live in the Atacama Desert. And it's so interesting because these places, let's take a look. They are both about 20 degrees away from the equator, but they are so different. And the main reason for this is you've got the Andes here, which block off the clouds and the rain from coming from the eastern side of the Andes, where you have the Amazon and some more temperate areas, and it leaves you with this thin strip along Chile and up into Bolivia where you get extremely dry and cold desert that you can really only find here in the Atacama. And like I mentioned before, the whole anthropology thing is super interesting too, about how the cultures develop differently and about how life exists super, dramatically from one area to another despite being antipodes. Now my research that I've done, I've mostly just been talking about antipodes that are super different from each other, but a lot of antipodes are the same, so I also just wanted to kind of share with you guys some antipodes that are remarkably similar despite being in places that you might think are pretty different. So the first one we've got is here in Galicia in northwestern Spain and here in central New Zealand. Both of these climates are temperate, right? New Zealand you might think is more of a rainy, maybe pseudo-temperate environment, and then Spain you'd think is maybe drier. But here in Galicia, it's actually a lot wetter. So both of these antipodes share similar environments and climates, despite in the, kind of public mind probably being very different places. And the other one is going to be Hawaii, specifically the Big Island and northern Botswana. Here you can see that Hawaii does indeed have a tropical climate, but you can see the orange here, it's also got dry, semi-arid, hot climate, right? And you can see here in northern Botswana, this also has the dry, semi-arid, hot climate. So maybe two areas that you wouldn't exactly think are similar. Hawaii is obviously surrounded by water, Botswana is landlocked. They have very similar climates, so some pretty cool stuff. That's a lot of yapping. Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed guests, thank you guys so much for watching the Jack of All States YouTube channel. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you guys learned something new and have a new appreciation for the antipodes of our world. If any of you go ahead and decide to start digging a hole wherever you are and pop out on the other side of the world, just please take a look at the map that I showed you and make sure that you're going to pop up on land, unless you're a really good swimmer. Then you can go ahead and dig wherever you want. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Jack of all states, out!